All right, we are live.
Woohoo!
All right, are we ready to discuss?
I think so. I'm excited. I'm so excited.
Oh, yeah. Oh, gosh.
So I saw that you finished it a couple of weeks ago. I just finished it last night.
Sorry. No, I did. I was trying to finish it before the family had come in.
Oops.
Oh, no, you're fine. That's just life.
Yeah, yeah. So, gosh, I'm so excited to talk about this book, to be honest, because, I was asking you all those questions before, and I was right.
You were. It was so hard to keep closed, to keep all the spoilers from just spewing out and just saying, yes, Amy, yes.
Oh yes, I was really so excited because I'm reading things and I'm reading things and I'm like, oh yep, no, that's what I guess. Oh yep, that's it's just so exciting. I was like, yes. I don't usually guess things, so that's why it was so funny. But it all fit together. It made sense to me.
I'm glad.
So,
and we have half the book to discuss too, so that's
yeah.
We have a lot of things to go over.
Yes. So what should we start with?
Oh gosh. You decide, because you finished it just last night.
So should we start talking about, because you and I've already talked about the beginning part of it, but we haven't talked about it on here. So should we talk a little bit about the first part?
Yeah, let's go with that. I mean, or we can just do like how did we think the first part really connected with the rest of the book?
Okay.
Because what we've been doing is we've discussed the first fourth, the second fourth, and then we took a break, and now we're discussing the last half. So some of the conversation might be a little disjointed, but that's just life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so in the first section, I was mentioning how I've heard a lot of reviews for this book that the first 80 pages or so are very confusing. And I agreed. And I was hoping that I was like, no, I won't feel that way. I'll totally be fine with it. But she uses a whole different way of describing things and vocabulary. She uses a completely different vocabulary, which takes you time to understand, because she goes into this expecting you to understand, not like she expects you to understand what she's telling you, but it's almost like, to make it seem more real, she just expects you as a reader to already understand her, but then you have to go through it and piece things together as you're reading along, is what I've come to the realization. That's how she's doing it,
which I really appreciate, because it's not like a traditional fantasy where you're starting to learn with like the main character. Oh, you're the chosen one, and here's X, Y, and Z that you now have to learn. No, the main character's already done. One of the main characters has already done all of this, and you're just plopped right in with her. And here's maybe a friendly glossary if you take the time to read about it.
which I did not. Didn't even know about.
This is the second time I've read this, and you're the one that told me about it, so.
Did you read about the seasons at all? Did you ever? I didn't actually go back and read the seasons.
So I did end up reading about the seasons, and I did really appreciate it, because what she ended up doing with the seasons, and that was the appendix. It was Appendix 1. It goes from the most recent season to the ones that they might not have history about, but it's the most agreed upon stuff. So it's not every single season they know about, but it does have some interesting history about them. It's like a paragraph for each season.
Okay.
And I think the most interesting thing about the seasons is how far away they were from each other, and how devastating or how not devastating they were, because it's almost realistic on how each season was, or how each season came about. It was interesting, and she has created an amazing world.
Well, I mean, technically, this book is all about climate change, right? It's all about the world after climate, after we've screwed up the planet. And the seasons are realistic events that could happen considering the world is falling apart, right? So a lot of these things are, the seasons are partially what's happening with the world, but then also partially the way people react to these things that are happening, right? Like the whole, the teeth, season of the teeth, where they become cannibals. Like that's a reaction to lack of food, famine, right?
Yeah. And I thought it was really interesting that Season of the Teeth actually came about because it had been 1,000 years after the last season. And so no one was prepared and almost thought seasons were a myth at that point. And since no one was prepared, hence the teeth.
Yeah, that was fun to read about.
But I also thought it was interesting too that it's actually a very common occurrence then too. Like she has built such an incredible world that it's just like an offhanded comment. Oh yeah, by the way, they are all cannibals during a season.
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, and nothing surprising is what it is. Like nothing is surprising.
Right.
Which is, and the reality of the story is that there's a lot of awful things that happen. Like this isn't a warm fuzzy story, as we were mentioning before. It's not warm fuzzy. There's some really horrible things that happen, but they're all things that are true to life and things that we see that happen all the time. So it's not even like there's any, I mean, aside from the magic stuff, but like a lot of this is based on reality, you know, it's based on true
control seismic. Just me.
Oh, well, I mean, I have problems with my magic, apparently. I'm not an origin.
No, but you're completely right. It's such an interesting way to go about everything. And I love it. Again, there's a reason she's won an award for, not just an award, she's won multiple awards for this book.
Yeah, I was just so impressed with how creative it was. It was just, there were so many times that I was like, wow, she's just so creative. And the way she thinks is incredible. And yet so much of it wasn't surprising because it, you know, she pulled from so many. I feel like I could see her influences from other sci-fi fantasy. I could see her influences from real life. So it was fascinating because it was so new to me. This book was so different than anything I've read in a while, but at the same time I was not that surprised either, you know, like it didn't feel too off the wall. And it did, but in a good way. Like I don't know, I don't know how to.
No, it's incredible. Like Stacey was saying, world building was incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So okay, so we in the beginning we were talking about how you're shifting between perspectives because at one point you are the main character. You're from Yu's perspective, which is Essen, and Yu's perspective. That's great grammar.
We'll take it here.
And then you've got Demaya, who's the young Origin, and you've got Cyanite, who is the she's a foreringer, and she's going to go on this quest, you know, job.
Again, we'll take it.
Yeah, and I had questions. Like it was so funny because I was like, well, what about this, Liz? And what about that? And Liz was like just biting her tongue. Like, I can't say anything.
It's such a good book to reread too, because you get so much out of it too the second time. It's not just like, don't get me wrong, just read it, basically. But the second time was good. But I'm so sorry. I felt so bad because I felt like it was such a bad discussion the first couple of times because I'm like, I want to say this and I can't.
It wasn't a bad discussion. It's a good book to be able to discuss. And I know that you wanted to say a lot of things, but I kind of had fun like guessing. And then you were very good about not giving anything away, but I was pretty sure about my guesses. Yeah, I was really excited that I like guessed it all. Not go ahead.
No, I'm impressed. When I was reading it the first time, I was like, blown away. I'm like, what is this?
It was, it, it laid out so well. You know, it really did lay out really well. And I guess, should we just kind of like go into, okay. So I guessed that they were one and the same person. I guess I asked Liz, I'm like, okay, are they the same person? Because they're the same person, aren't they? And, yeah, they were the same person. I was really excited to find that out. And it made a lot of sense, especially the further along you went. And I kind of had mentioned to you that I really did not like Cyanite, because at that period of her life, she was just annoying. She was really annoying. But she grew on me. She definitely grew on me. And go ahead.
Oh, I loved watching too how Dynema? No, not
Demaya.
Thank you. But how she grew up too. You could see her changing from the girl that you just met in the beginning of the book into Cyanide with that first interaction with the city girl, who ends up being the girl she meets later too, which is also incredible. But when they go into that pit for the first time, she's like, you can't do anything. You can't say anything. Like, I can't be with you. I'm going to get in trouble. And then you see the same personality in Cyanide later. And that was just, I loved that chapter just for that reason too.
Which was really surprising to me, because when we first meet Cyanide, she seems so... she seems really disenchanted by everything. And then yet later on, especially with Alabaster, you can see that she still really believes strongly in the Fulcrum, and that she feels safety in the Fulcrum, even though the Fulcrum's what's holding her down, what's oppressing her. And yet she still has beliefs that this is where she is safest, and Alabaster's like, you're ridiculous, you're delusional, you're hiding from the truth. And I saw that in Demaya originally, but when I first met Cyanide, I didn't see that as much. So I was like, they seemed like two different personalities, but you start seeing the connections, especially later on. And then Essen was fascinating, because she had completely changed her personality to not be Cyanide. Yeah. Which I was blown away by. I was like, oh, I see.
And you always get these little tidbits too in Essence chapters where it's like, who am I? No, I've chosen this character. And just like, oh, yes. Because like she did choose the Essen personality to kind of save herself and save her mentality after her whole Cyanide chapter had ended, and kind of to save herself that heartbreak as well. And then it kind of comes around to that full circle where another child dies and she just can't handle that heartbreak. And then the season starts and it's just this huge, never ending like spiral she's going through. And you get to kind of experience that out of conjunction throughout this whole book.
Yeah. And it's really interesting to see her start losing it, or at least start losing her coolness as Essen, start reverting back to Cyanide slowly, and then, like you said, the questions even come more towards the end, like, well, I need to continue to maintain this personality, but where did that sarcasm come from? Where did this, why am I doing these things when I have worked so hard to not be that person? Right. Yeah, I loved that. I really loved that it was the same person. Like, I was going to be disappointed if I was wrong. I was so going to be disappointed, because it's the only thing that made sense to me. It was really like, once you and I had started getting into it and talking about things, it probably helped me figure it out, because you and I were talking about things. It just didn't make any sense for it to be anything other than that for me.
No, it's so true.
Yeah.
This is something we also talked about, but Stacy was saying this book is so cruel, or the world was so cruel to children. And I know we've talked about that, 2 weeks ago now?
It was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. We did talk about that. That was something I had a really hard time with. And that's why I say, like, it's not a warm and fuzzy book, because this is a book that will make you sick to your stomach. Like, it's a book that brings about a lot of pain. But then I also said that it's really how people in power behave to people who they want to keep oppressed. You know, there's so many cases of this in real life, that this happens all the time. You think about, you know, you think about slavery, you think about the Jim Crow laws, you think of all these situations, which I'm sure that N.K. Jemisin pulled from for her inspiration, where people in power were trying to keep these people oppressed, and they get off on this power and they use it against people who they feel are weaker than them, and that's how they keep them down, keep them in this oppressed state. And it was just horrible.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, at the end too, that's all Cyanide at the time could think about with her child.
Yeah.
And ultimately why she made the decision to kill her child.
Have you ever read Beloved by Toni Morrison?
I haven't. It's on my desperately need to read list.
Then never mind.
Oh no. So don't read it? Is that what you're saying?
No. It's just I wanted to do a connection, but I don't, you know, yeah. Anyways, sorry. If any of you out there have read Beloved, you'll understand the connection, though.
Sorry. Sorry, Amy.
Yeah. No. Don't be sorry. No, not at all. Yeah. So I agree with that comment, though. She was horrible to children here, but I don't think it was she that's horrible. I think it's it's the man that's, not the man, but like
the society that she was built.
Yeah.
And yeah, we talked at length, especially after that one chapter with yeah.
It was horrible. And then we were talking also about how Maya's situation in the school, you think that these kids are stuck in this place where all they have is each other. I mean, they have their guardians, but their guardians are, that's a Stockholm syndrome situation. Like, you have these children all together and they can't do anything except hurt each other because they're so scared and they're so frightened, and they don't know what's going to happen to them. Well, we know what's going to happen to them. And it's nothing good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was definitely an interesting, maybe not parallel, but contrast to see the other origin that grew up outside of the fulcrum. I'm blanking on his name right now, but when they moved to the island, Enon.
Yeah.
Thank you. And just how happy he was. And that's kind of, I think, where Cyanide gets her inspiration from. It's like, how are you an origin? You're so accepted. You're the leader of this community. And everywhere else I've ever been, I'm looked down upon. I'm subhuman. This is what really turns her character around. And I thought that was beautiful, and then awful when it's gone.
I know. I knew it had to. Though. Like, it just couldn't. And I think Cyanide knew that subconsciously the whole time. Alabaster was hoping, but he was just so broken anyways that of course he was done. But I think Cyanide, well, she wasn't broken, so she still had the energy to want to make a difference. But at the same time, I think she also felt this underlying, like, things just can't stay this way. Because things aren't fixed in this world. Things are still, they may be okay on this island, but they're not okay in the world overall. And and they didn't stay. They didn't. That was so awful. Like, that was a really horrible situation. And I did guess that Alabaster was the person in the prologue. I did end up guessing that, and I was really excited about that too. Because I never guess things, so I was really excited about that. I'm like, oh my gosh, this book's for me. But I just still didn't understand his relationship with the Stone Eater.
I don't think this book addresses it. It's one of the other books in the trilogy.
Okay.
And yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, it's just to keep you guessing, right? It is the first one in a trilogy, and you have to continue reading on. Sorry.
No,
for you.
No, you're not. No. What I think is cool is that she leaves you kind of. It's not really a hardcore cliffhanger, so that's nice because you do get some satisfaction at the end of this book, and you don't feel like, oh shoot, I have to wait for the next one. Well, but like she does leave a lot of questions so that you are excited about reading the next one. And I kind of appreciated that there wasn't a hardcore cliffhanger that I was like, oh, I have to wait.
You don't necessarily have to finish the series if you don't want to. You could be content with just this first book, but you don't get to find out the full story. Like, you still don't know what's happened to the daughter and the husband. You don't know what's happened really to the moon.
Yes, the moon. I guessed that one too.
You also guessed that one.
I feel bad for you, Liz, because I just kept throwing out these things at you, and you're like, "Oh, I can't say anything."
Don't look at. I'm gonna log off now.
You have a good poker face, but
I know.
Because during the interlude, she mentioned all the things, and I'm like, but she doesn't mention the moon. She doesn't mention the moon, so there must be the moon is missing. And yeah, who killed the moon?
Again, you'll have to keep reading.
So I guess it implies that the origin, like, so I guess they implied that the origins ruined the earth, but that was society that implied that, right? I mean, that's what I kind of got from this.
Yeah. There's a huge bit of lore that's still unanswered in this book that they go into depth. And just like Teresa, it looks like.
Yes, that's my friend Teresa.
There's so much more to the story if you continue reading. She is absolutely correct. Like, I would always suggest you finish the trilogy. But if you're content with just this book, because it is such an amazing, amazing, amazing book, you don't have to. But I'd always say continue.
Okay, yeah, because there are definitely a ton of questions that you still have. I really do wonder about the Stone Eaters. I wonder why they all dislike each other. That was surprising. That all the Stone Eaters seem to dislike each other. Not one of them had any warm fuzzy about any other Stone Eater.
Right? They're not working together. But I also like that nuance as well. It's like, just because you're one race doesn't mean you're all for each other. Just like with anyone else, you're not a monolith.
Yeah. I'm curious, because it almost seems like the Stone Eaters attach themselves to one origin, or like they pick their origin, or for some reason they're called to a specific origin, because that one that was working with Alabaster, Antimony. Antimony was like, I love you. I will always love you. I will always take care of you. I will always be there for you, sort of thing. But it wasn't like it didn't seem like a romantic sort of thing. It was sort of like I have this obligation to you because I care about you. Almost like the Guardians, actually, in a weird sort of way. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I don't think this is. I feel like I read it in this book. So in fear of not giving away spoilers for the next book, he's turning into stone, right? They've said that Alabaster is turning into stone, right?
So
What
weird.
do Stone Eaters eat?
Themselves.
Stones, yeah.
Well, but didn't he say it's like me? Hoa, the little boy, was like, that's me, when he was talking about the stones that he was eating. Because she asked, what is that, or what something.
What is he turning into? Or
no. Oh, I have to look it up.
like the no, it's all.
She asked him a question. It was like, what? I don't remember what the question was exactly, but he said me, and she was like, well, he wasn't making much sense, is her response. She didn't say it out loud, but she was like, he didn't make any sense when he said that. I don't even know where I'm going to find that right now. But he said me, and I think he was talking about what he was eating. Like, that's me. I could be completely wrong, but that's what I got from that dialogue bit. And you're probably going to find it faster than I am. It's toward the end.
It's the very last chapter is when she meets Alabaster again.
But this is when she was confronting Hoa. Remember when she was confronting him because who was it? Essen was confronting Hoa. After she confronted Tonki, she confronted Hoa, and he finally showed her what he had in his hands, and she asked him something about it, and he said me. Like, it's me. Like, he's eating himself.
Oh.
Is what it sounded like.
Maybe I misread that then.
I know. Sorry, guys. I should have had, like, a note, but I didn't think that would come up. Well, I didn't know. I didn't think.
Okay. I found, though, what I was looking for. It's at the end of 446.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying she was looking at the stump of his arm, Alabaster's arm. And stone, his arm had become stone, but most of the stump was gone, and there were tooth marks.
Yeah.
And Antimony had been eating it. Or it implies that Antimony was eating it because she smiled with her diamond teeth after Ensign had seen it.
Okay, so Alabaster's turning into stone, and the parts that are turning into stone are getting eaten by Antimony, is what you're saying. And that's kind of what I wasn't clear about.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's weird. Why is she eating him? Well, he's dying, right? So he's dying, and she's been nibbling off of him.
Yes.
I don't get that. I know. Nice. Thank you.
So about that book, cannibalism. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, there's it's not cannibalism because she's not human, so it's a-okay.
Okay, I'll give you that.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting and strange. I wonder now. I'm curious about that. So, I guess that'll be that whole storyline about the Stone Eaters is very confusing to me. So I'll be curious to read more about that so I can find out what the deal is with the Stone Eaters, because in this you really do find out a lot more about the Origines and what their situation is, and you begin to really understand the relationship between the Origines and the humans. But then we get that interlude towards the end where it's saying, I know it seems like this is just a battle between the humans and the Origines, but it's not. There's a lot more to this. There are the Stone Eaters. There are, what is it, Father Earth they even mentioned, I think, or something like that. Like there's a lot more players in this game, in a sense. Not game, but like this big ordeal.
In the game, in the lore, whatever. Yeah. And there are. It's awesome.
So what I'm curious about with the lore is somebody put these tablets together at some point, and there's always been someone around long enough to be able to pass them down.
Yeah, or hide them or erase parts of it. To me, I equate it kind of like to history or religion, where the winner gets to tell the story, right? So who's ever in charge gets to say what people know. And there is or can be someone who has the full story out there, but it's not common knowledge. And so even our main characters and we at this point don't know the full story of this world's history.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're just learning about the obelisks, and so are Cyanite and all the people around her. Like Tonki knows a little bit just because the leadership had a little bit of information, but it doesn't seem like they had that much information, at least at this point.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that pit is still completely up in the air, right?
Yeah, where they said that's where they create the obelisks, right? That's what she said. But we don't. And then that whole section where she was talking about, or I should say that Guardian was like the socket was speaking through the Guardian or something like that. And they were saying that so the obelisks actually fought back against who was creating them. Is that kind of what we're supposed to get from that? Or the socket fought back or something? There was like,
Honestly, that's going to be for the next book again, because that's what the Guardians, right? That's how the Guardians are kind of made and how the Guardians kind of know what to do.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because okay, I'm always asking questions that are
I will warn you though, too. This is the book I remember the most out of the series. So as we get into the second and especially the third book, for some reason, as I went back through them and read the summaries, I'm like,
you
I
don't remember.
remember some parts of them, but I don't remember a lot. So I'm
Did you
excited to
like
reread them.
did you like them as well?
I remember liking them less because I
Okay.
think I was just enamored so much. The screen is weird. I remember liking this book so much because of the plot twist at the end. And then the other books, I just liked a little least, and we'll talk about it. We'll talk about
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and not anything bad per se. I mean, the world building is still superb. It's N.K. Jemisin. But again, we'll talk about it.
Okay. That sounds good. Yeah, I really liked I was really impressed with how well N.K. Jemisin talked about diversity, like not talked about diversity, how she integrated diversity into her book, but there was nothing performative about it. It was it just felt right. Like all of it felt really good. And I really enjoyed that because it made everything seem so more real. It made the fact that she talks to you like you already know what's going on, the fact that she creates this really diverse group of people that you're meeting. I thought it was it made everything feel very realistic. And I really appreciated that about her writing. And the way she talked, like the dialogue even felt very realistic. It was impressive, it was I was just so impressed.
Have you read The City We Became? I think I've asked you this yet. The City We
Not
Became
yet.
yet?
Not yet. I really want to. Yeah, I'm going to. Oh, I will. I just, me, how fast I read.
How's that TBR going?
Oh, not so good. Not so good. June wasn't my month.
It's okay. You're fine. Next month.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Tonki. Let's talk about Tonki a little bit.
Yes. She
Yeah.
is
So
an interesting character. I love her.
yeah, she's fun. She's a fun one because at first I couldn't tell whether we should trust her. It she comes in and she sneaks into the fulcrum and she like I wasn't sure if she was testing, like if she was actually placed there to test Demaya at first. I was like, was she been planted? Is she a plant? Is she trying? Are we supposed to, is this supposed to be a test for Demaya?
Right? No. And then I love too, again, with the timelines. I can't get over the timelines. I'm sorry. I love how she's introduced to Ensign before she's introduced to Demaya. And it's almost like who is this random character that's just in this story. And then later on in Ensign's storyline, after the big reveal, she's like, you were that kid. What? You've been following me. And then you realize that this person, after everything that's happened, has successfully followed Ensign throughout her entire life, even when she was on the island, and like never really lost her. And even with how smart Ensign was, like there's someone else who was smarter almost.
And I still don't quite understand why she's been following her for the last 30 years. Like I get that she was impressed by her as a child, like in a way, like she was impressed that she survived and she wanted to make sure she was okay. Like I get that. But she seems to know that Essen like is going to have some kind of relationship with these obelisks. But did she know that because she was already following her, or did she know that because she was tracking the obelisks and saw that they were all going towards, like, I don't, what made her initially just track Essen all the time? Like, was it because she knew about or was it because she was already tracking her I don't understand why she started tracking her to begin with. Like, because it's a lot of work. I guess just because it's a lot of work, and she's just another origin. There's a ton of origins.
That's a really good question. I imagine it started with them because of their interaction when they were kids. And then later on, it was because she could track the obelisks, or the obelisks were moving towards her. And Tonki did say that was a rare ability. And Alabaster at that very last chapter too was like, can you do it yet? And so it's interesting because it also sounds like Ensign's youngest son, or youngest child, the son, was also able to do stuff with the obelisk, because Tonki had given away that they had moved faster for 5 years, and then
Right. Okay, yeah. So that was influencing the obelisks. But I still don't. We didn't find out why there was that obelisk that was coming from the desert, though, right? We didn't find that out in this, because Essen's like, I've never been to that desert, so why would it be coming towards me? And then I kind of thought, well, maybe the doctor is an origin, but I'm like, no, she would have known if he was an origin. And so, who's been to the desert that was where she is? That, like, because Tonki made it sound like you create a relationship with the obelisks, not like the obelisks just come and seek you out randomly, is what Tonki made it seem like.
Maybe they just know.
This origin is going to be special.
I love him.
Well, and that's interesting too, that the obelisks are creating relationships with origins, like they're sentient or something like that. Mm-hmm. Like they have feelings and care about origins. I thought that was interesting.
Isn't it?
There was a whole lot of this the last couple of times.
There was a whole lot of that, wasn't there?
Isn't it? Love it. Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah, things to think about. The Guardians. I'm very curious about the Guardians.
Yeah. No, I think they are explored the least amount in this book, and I do really enjoy that, because it's something you really get to explore in the next 2 books.
Okay.
And it's like a little tease, especially that one scene where their guardian just like rips out that chip. Whew. That was an intense scene.
Oh yeah, and all of them are kind of like, oh, that's really unfortunate. But it's almost like the Guardians have accepted the fact that they don't have the freedom either. Like if something. So it's interesting because you think the Guardians are the ones that are in charge, or that they have all the power, at least over the origins. But at the same time, they've already accepted the fact that if they malfunction, that they're gonna die. So they don't really have any freedom themselves. Mm-hmm. The Guardians don't.
Makes you ask, who's in charge of the Guardians?
Right. Yeah. And the other thing that's interesting is the Guardians come from the stills of the origin, is what I had got from early on, right? Is that mm-hmm. correct? So, I mean, they're the children of a lot of these origins.
And that's also another thing that I thought was really messed up about this whole world. Brilliant, but messed up. Because it's just never ending abuse of power, and okay, we're done.
It's like it's layered on top of, there's a whole bunch of it. It just keeps getting layered on top of different people oppressing different people, and
no one wins.
But nobody really knows who's in charge. So
yeah.
Until
the season comes.
Right. And then it's whoever can survive.
Everyone fends for themselves.
Yeah, I'm curious. So this next season is supposed to last 1,000 years, or at least 1,000 years.
And that's what they're predicting. Yeah.
I think it's interesting that they brought the doctor in, Lerna, I think his name was.
Mhm.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't really see the significance in that, but maybe I will in the next book. It just seemed that one seemed a little strange to me. I was like, okay.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I feel at least the first book in this explanation, it's a little far-fetched. Like, yeah, you survived by doing all these interesting things, and all of a sudden they made it in the same town.
Yeah. Yeah, they end up in the same exact place in this really like hidden calm. And it's really hard to get into calms anyways. I mean, I guess not for him because he's a doctor. So anybody's going to want a doctor, but of all the places they could end up, they end up at the same place. It seems like too much of a coincidence.
The one that's Origin Run too.
Yes. Because he's not getting pulled by Ika. Ika can only pull Origins and Stone Eaters. But she can't pull stills. So
No, it's very true. Like I said, it will be very interesting because I don't remember a lot from the second and third book, which I'm excited to reread them because of it. So
that's exciting. I loved that calm was a geode, was a giant geode. That was the coolest concept. I was just, I loved that. I thought that was so creative. Fascinating.
Right?
Yeah.
No. And just how in depth they get in, well, at least even in this book, that they get into it as well. It's like, this is how it works. Ancient technology.
But I never felt like it was too much. You know, it didn't feel like info dump to me ever. You know, it didn't feel like, too much information that was too technical or anything like that. Which I was impressed by that, considering we didn't know what all this stuff was. We were trying to discover it on our own as we're reading this. I thought that was impressive that maybe that's why she didn't want it to be info dumpy. So she was like, well, you're just going to have to figure it out on your own as you go along.
No, I think a lot of it too was because they themselves, the characters, didn't know either. And so they were just explaining what they knew at the time, a convenient plot point, and we'll figure it out with them.
Yeah, so we're kind of discovering it with them the whole time, and then it's like this new adventure for all of us. Cool. So cool.
I'll take it.
So cool. Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. Okay, so the really like the sad, I mean, there was a lot of sad things. Don't get me wrong, this book is so sad, but it was pretty sad when.
It's a really happy book. I don't get what you're saying.
No, yeah. But when the Guardians can just hug the skin on skin to the Origins, and then basically like it's almost like they implode or something like that. Is that kind of what happens?
That's kind of what I was imagining. Like the description was the Guardian uses their own power against them, so like they have a seismic shift inside of them. And so it sounds really gross, destructive, and sad.
It makes me really want to know more about the Guardians, actually, and understand how their chip works, because how does the chip allow them to, their whole body to become this like weapon in a sense, you know, and then the fact
sounds
that
like only a couple of them are able to do that too.
Oh, really? I didn't catch that. Okay. Yeah, because you never see Shafa with his shirt off trying to hug people. So strange.
Who knows? Maybe in the future.
Okay. But yeah, that was strange. That was very strange, and not in a bad way. Well, I mean, it is a bad thing, but I mean, like that it was like they have to hug him to kill him. That was really odd. And then I forgot. Sorry. I forgot. I had another thing, but
you're fine.
I guess I have a lot of questions, and I know that I'll find out once I read Obelisk Gate. So the next one.
No, it'll be good. Oh, here's my question, I guess. What did you think of the island setting when they got to the island and how that I guess, community was built.
I thought that was really interesting. I had a hard time visualizing that one compared. Like I could visualize the geode area much better than I could visualize the island. Basically, it was all indoors, though. I mean, it was all inside, right? And
geode or the island?
The island. Like they were all like kind of like cut into the rock. All
oh,
of these.
yes. Sorry. I'm like, no, there were some outside scenes.
No, but I mean, like, yeah, because they could go up on top but most of it was cut into the rock. So it wasn't like the geode where it's like one big open space where they're all inside, but it was like they all go into like these almost like caves in a sense. Not like caves because they weren't made like caves, but
kind of like their dwelling was inside lava tubes almost. That's what I was kind of imagining. Lava tubes on the side of a cliff.
Yeah, but like one way in sort of thing, though, right?
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like you go in and there's a big community inside there. It was like each person's home is kind of like, is that kind of how it was?
I think.
Yeah, I thought that was really neat. Huh?
Go for it. Go for it.
Oh, sorry. I talked too much. No, I thought that was really neat to be able to see the island because they had mentioned in the interlude that nobody ever talks about islands because islands are ridiculous. Who would want to be on an island because they're dangerous and earthquakes happen and tidal waves happen and all that stuff. So I found it fascinating that she used the island as like this almost like sanctuary in a sense away from San Zed and the other, the whole place on stillness.
Mm-hmm. That was smart too.
Yeah, until it wasn't anymore.
Sure, bring that one up. It was safe for hundreds of years, Amy. Multiple seasons.
I know. I thought that was really sad, actually, because I really liked that community. It was a very inclusive, like well, actually, I thought that was interesting, though, because cyanide still felt like it was a form of oppression being there.
I think, too, it was a form of oppression for her because it wasn't what she was used to at the fulcrum.
But she was saying how... No, go ahead.
They're trying to tell her to, like, calm down. You don't have to do what you're used to. You don't have to be doing something every second of the day. And she's used to doing something every second of the day. Like, she's pregnant. She's had a baby. And they're like, calm down. You just had a baby. You kind of need to rest. You need to take care of the baby. Yeah. At least for the first formative months or so.
She had a really hard time with that. You're right. She was really bored. She's used to doing things because, at the fulcrum, their life is about this almost like a schedule. Like you have to do all these things and you're always trying to move up. You're always trying to move up. But I was thinking more along the lines of like, they really were still just using the Origins. They were using the Origins as protection though.
True. That is a different, when you put it that way. I mean, I guess just because you're putting it in a form of protection or put it in the form of a leader, that doesn't mean you're not using someone. Like when all that weight is put on your shoulders, that's still a ton of stress.
Yeah, and when she was pissed because they wanted conundrum. It's not conundrum, but it's like that. Koru.
Koru. Let's go with Koru. I like it.
They wanted him. They wanted them to have a baby for them, just like they do in the fulcrum. They're still treated as breeders in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was one thing that Cyanide said. She was pretty, you could tell she was pissed off about that it was still a situation where they were still being treated like breeders.
That's true. Yeah, one prison for another. I was just about to say, but they're not asking for another baby. Like that was going to be her choice, but at the same time, kind of.
Well, because they were going to go steal a baby if she didn't give them Koru.
Yeah.
In Origin. I mean, it's still a better life. Like, I totally get that it's still a better life, but I think Cyanide was just pissed that it's still
But then you get into the question, like, is a prison with nicer settings, isn't that still a prison?
I mean, that's kind of, yeah, it
Yeah.
is. I think that's why a Cyanite was also really restless.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad we talked about this because I was like, it's a great place. Why not? Nope. Nope.
Yeah, but it's still a prison. Like it is still a prison. And Alabaster was, it's funny because Cyanite was okay with the Fulcrum being a prison and Alabaster wasn't. But Alabaster was okay with, I don't remember the name of the island now.
I think
The island being a prison.
That island, that one place.
And Cyanite wasn't.
Move.
It's like they switched. Oh, Mauve.
Move.
Yeah.
I cannot pronounce anything.
Yeah. Like, it's almost like they switched roles in a sense, because then Cyanite wasn't okay with the fact that Alabaster was so okay with this being, their final.
But there was also a discussion, I think, with someone on the island, like, hey, Alabaster is broken and you're strong and you have to be strong for him because you're not. And that was really interesting because then, like, it's almost a switch too in the book where you don't see Alabaster strong anymore. He's not this ultimate figure, this all-powerful 10-ringer anymore, because Cyanite has that switch in her head, seeing him in a different light as well.
But that being said, at the very end, she says he basically wasn't crazy the whole time. The sentence before the last sentence of the book basically says, like, she realized he wasn't crazy that whole time. Let's see.
You're right.
Yeah. He's not crazy at all, and he never has been.
Have you ever heard of something called a moon? No, sorry, I love that.
That was so exciting.
I love that last line.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh, I am excited about reading the next one. I mean, I obviously am excited about reading the next one, but even more so now because the moon, like, I can't wait to find out what happened. And I'm really curious about the obelisks. At first, I was kind of like, obelisks, because they're just something that floats in the sky, and they're just a big shape of something. But then, just the fact that she could draw power from them was fascinating, and that one stone eater got stuck in one, and and he talked to her. What did he say? Oh yeah, I'm fine.
I'm fine. Because she was wondering, she was like, oh my gosh, he looks like he's in so much pain. And it's like he could read her mind, right? And he's like, nah, I'm good. We're fine.
Yeah, I know. So that's what I mean about, like, that's what I mean by the dialogue was really very realistic in a lot of ways, because it wasn't like he didn't say anything, he was like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Like, yeah, no, it's no big deal. I just loved the way she did that, the way she was making up all these concepts that were very strange, and you're like, what is this book? And then she has dialogue where it's very, like, there's almost a lot of just like slang and different things where she's just, casual, very casual. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. And I thought that was so cool. It made it feel more real.
That's why it's such a great book.
Have you heard anybody who didn't like this book? Like, really didn't like the whole book?
I have not done research on it.
Yeah.
So I can't say I have. But I'm sure there's people out there. There's always someone.
There's always,
right?
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah. No, and that's why I was curious, because I've watched a lot of vlogs, and like I said, about, not vlogs, but reviews about this, and like I said, a lot of people said at the beginning it was really difficult to get into, but once they got into it, almost everybody I saw who's reviewed it has loved it. So I was just curious what people were saying about it who didn't like it, like what they didn't like about it. And I haven't done any research, so I have nothing to offer.
Next time, I'll come back with more information.
What did people hate about this? Because I mean, like was mentioned earlier, there are some really difficult scenes, and there's some heavy trigger warnings in this. So I can see that there are elements to this that can be very triggering, and if you struggle with these specific triggers, then you might not want to continue.
Yeah. Yes, without a doubt.
Yeah.
No, it does. I was just about to say it's not too graphic, and I'm like, wait, no, it does get pretty graphic.
There's some pretty graphic moments. They're not too long lasting though, so I didn't think that they lasted too. Like, you kind of have that moment, you sit with it, it's really heavy, it's really awful, but then you kind of move on, because then the story moves on, or you change perspectives. You move on to Demaya, or you move on to Essence. So it's almost like you can't dwell on things very long.
It's a fast-moving book, that is for sure. Which is great.
And I did, and I liked that every chapter something happened. There was something that was like, whoa, for every chapter. It was pretty cool. Like, there's a lot of movement in this book.
Yeah. So, what was your rating, Amy?
Oh, it was 5 stars. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it had to be. I mean, like, it was like, I feel like this book is almost hard, because it's not one of those books. I mean, I can give 5 stars to books that aren't happy and not pleasant, but like, I think this will be a good book. Like you said, it's going to be a great book to reread, because I feel like there's a lot I'll catch on the next time around, and maybe I'll be able to sit with it more and enjoy it more, which sounds weird because I gave it 5 stars, because I did enjoy it, but there's so much you're learning along the way, and there's so many things happening that it's hard to just kind of like, oh, this is an enjoyable book. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. Because you're not sitting down and smiling the whole time, right? So you can't say you're happy about the book.
Yeah,
but
and
it
it's
was
also
entertaining.
It was
entertaining.
Yeah, and I think you're also just thinking the whole time, because you're just like thinking, like, well, what's this and what's that, and how's this go? How does this affect this, and why is this and this? And so, but it was fascinating, and it's so unique and so creative. I couldn't not give it a 5 star. Like, it blew my mind. Like I said, this is not like anything I've read ever. I don't think I've ever read a book like this before.
Which is why it's amazing.
Have you read any books that kind of remind you of this, or like feel?
No, not at all. I keep going back to that time parallel awesomeness. That's what always gets me for this book, because it is 3 different perspectives, and you go into it with, okay, give me 3 different point of views. It's awesome. I like it. Done it before. And then it just hits you at the end with this phenomenal world building, and then bam. Hey, you're learning about this character from 3 points of her life. It's all the same character, and this is why she is who she is at this point. It's like, yes.
Yeah, I love that. I do. I really, and like I said, if it hadn't turned out that way, I was going to be very disappointed. So.
1 star. Never read it again. We're not continuing the series.
Yeah, how dare you not do that? That I randomly placed. Like I was like, you have to do this now that I've guessed that you're gonna do it. It was. But it
writing
was so
N.K.
clever.
Jemisin. Oh, yeah.
N.K. Jemisin, I loved everything about your book except this. And so therefore I'm giving it a 1 star. I had to give it. I mean, like, I had to give it a 5 star. I couldn't not. It was, because it's something so new to me. It's something I haven't read before. It's very unique, and I'm very, very impressed by N.K. Jemisin. So I'm excited to read, more. I'm excited to read the rest of the series. I've always wanted to read The City We Became. That one actually is probably even more of a book that I've been excited to read than the 5th season, even though I've wanted to read this one for a long time too. But I kind of always have been curious about The City We Became. And so it will happen. I just don't know when.
So next month? No. Starts tomorrow.
No. Tomorrow. I'm reading The Ship of Magic. I have to read it within the next like 3 or 4 days. So that's what's happening right now.
It'll be good. It'll be fine.
It's good. I mean, I'm actually liking it more than the Farseer trilogy. I mean, I love the Farseer trilogy, don't get me wrong, but did you read the Live Ship Traders?
Not yet. Again, I'm still working on that Farseer. Yeah.
Or Royal Assassin.
Royal Assassin is still on my TBR. Guess what's going to be on my TBR again next month?
They're long books. They're involved books.
Yeah. I blame my family this month though. So
it's good. It's good to have somebody to blame.
Wasn't my fault at all. It's fine.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, no, I'm really liking. I'm only like 120 some odd pages into the Ship of Magic, and so far I'm loving it. Like this is the kind, but it's I like books like that. I like ships.
I love it though. I'm excited to see what you think about it. And then I can just maybe you'll be my motivation finally to get through the Farseer, to get to the Ship of Magic.
Are you enjoying Royal Assassin so far?
Oh, I haven't started it.
Okay, but have you read it before?
I've read it before. It's an amazing series, and I think that's why it keeps going down and down on my TBR, because it's like, I've read it before. I know I'll like it. I'll have to read these books first. It's going great.
Did you read Assassin's Quest?
I've only read the first one this year. Was it last? It might have been last year actually that I read it. So I'm still needing to read the Royal Assassin and Royal Assassin? Assassin's Quest. Assassin's Quest. Yeah. So the last two. Before, right? Again, yeah, I read all of them. But those were the only 2 Robin Hobb books I've read.
Okay. Haven't read any further in the series.
It's all good.
What did you rate? I'm just curious. What did you rate all 3 of those?
Oof. I think probably in the 4 range. I'd have to go back and look because it's been quite a while since I've read them.
Okay. I was just curious. Anyways, we're totally off topic, aren't we?
It's the same series. At least it's the same genre. Let's just
it's still fantasy.
Still fantasy.
Yeah, totally. High fantasy. Still high fantasy. Totally cool.
Oof.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to finish Whatever You Wantathon strong, so my goal was 12 books and I am at 10. So that's why I'm reading King and the Dragonflies, because it's a middle grade. And I'm like, I'm over halfway. And then I'm going to read a short story. This is my 12th book today. So I'm like, I'm going to get my 12 books in. Good. Yeah. So that's what I'm up to.
You are fine.
And you're going to keep
reading cry over a book. I think I have 10 pages left, so I'm probably going to start bawling as soon as I get out of this. I'm going to be like, yep, that's fine.
Oh no. So we caught you for this show right before you were finishing a book? Oh no.
Okay, that's fine. You saved me from bawling right before the show, and at least I don't have tear tracks down my face. So we're good. We're good.
Okay, good. Whew. Okay, good. That's really rough.
We're fine. It's fine. It's just a typical Wednesday.
But you recommend Beartown then, huh? By Frederick Bachman?
A lot of warnings on it. It's not descriptive, but there is sexual assault.
Okay.
And non-believers, believers. It's a whole thing. But
have you read a lot of Frederick Bachman?
Ooh, this I think is my 4th one finally. Yeah, but I am in love with the way he writes. He is just a beautiful writer. Well, really, I should say his translator is a beautiful writer because I believe he's Swedish.
Oh, okay. Or something.
So he's a beautiful writer, and his translator is also amazing. And I should really look into who his translator is.
Okay. I do want to read a Frederick Bachman at some point. Just hasn't happened yet. Like all the other books.
It's on the far TBR. You're fine.
Yeah. I feel that's how I feel like about all. I'm like, oh, I want to read that. Oh, I want to read that.
You're fine. You're fine.
It'll happen.
No.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Liz. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This was amazing.
Thank you. I'm so happy we read this together too.
Me too. I was, yeah, no, I'm so glad you wanted to read it with me, because I have been dying to read this, and it's always fun doing buddy reads with you anyways, so like that was perfect, and it was a good choice. We pick good buddy reads, don't we?
We really do, which let's just keep it going, honestly.
Yeah, we'll stay with the good ones, because I think just books that are fun to talk about, or at least have a lot to talk about. It's really, I love buddy reads.
Me too. Right. You have a wonderful, wonderful night too. And good luck with the reading. Good luck with the short story.
I'll get them done. I'll get them done. And I'm ending strong. And good luck with the crying.
Thank you. I'm really excited. All right. Have a good night. Bye.
All right. Good night.